She never thought her kindness would lead her into the arms of a man everyone feared. But that night, when the black car stopped in front of her home, Nina Hart's life changed forever. It was a quiet evening in the small part of the city where Nina lived with her mother. The air smelled of flowers from the shop where Nina worked. She loved her job even though it didn't pay much. Her mother had fallen sick and the bills kept piling up. Still, Nina believed things would soon get better. She always believed in hope. But that night, 3 men in black suits knocked on the door. Their faces were cold, their eyes sharp. Nina's mother gasped when she saw them. She whispered one name, a name that made Nina's heart stop: Adrian Costa. Everyone in the city knew that name. He was the man no one crossed, the one who ran things quietly but powerfully. The men said her mother owed money she couldn't pay back. Nina stepped forward, trembling but brave. "Please," she said softly. "Give me time. I'll work for it." The men only looked at each other and nodded. "The boss will decide," one said before they led her outside. In the dark car, Nina sat with her hands tight on her lap. The streets passed like shadows. When they stopped at a tall iron gate, she saw a large house behind it, beautiful but cold, like a cage. A man waited at the door. He was tall, dressed in black, with calm gray eyes that could see straight through her. This was Adrian Costa. "You are the daughter," he said in a deep, steady voice. Nina nodded. "I'll work for you," she whispered. "Just please don't take our home." He studied her for a long time before replying. "Work for me until the debt is gone. Fail and your home goes too." Nina lowered her eyes. "I'll do it." And that was how a simple girl who sold flowers walked into the house of the most feared man in the city, unaware that she was about to change his heart forever. She thought she was stepping into a house. She didn't know she was stepping into a world of secrets, danger, and a heart she would one day heal. The morning light felt strange inside Adrian Costa's mansion. Everything was large and quiet. The floors shone like mirrors, the air smelled of rich wood and roses that didn't come from her flower shop. Nina followed a woman who showed her to a small room near the back of the house. "You'll stay here," the woman said. "The boss doesn't like noise." Nina nodded, holding her small bag close. She missed her mother already. She looked out the window and saw the tall walls surrounding the house. It felt less like a home and more like a prison. Still, she reminded herself she had promised to be strong. Later that day, Nina met Adrian again in his study. He was reading papers, dressed neatly in a dark suit. When he looked up, his eyes met hers for a moment that felt longer than it should have. "You will help in the office," he said. "Keep records, answer calls, and make sure no one wastes my time." "Yes, sir," she answered softly. 4 days Nina worked quietly. She wrote down names, sorted papers, and served coffee. She never spoke unless asked to. The house was always filled with quiet voices, men in suits, and the sound of doors opening and closing. Everyone seemed to fear Adrian. Yet, when Nina saw him alone, there was something in his eyes, something sad, as if he carried a heavy story behind his calm face. One evening she saw him standing on the balcony looking out at the city lights. He didn't notice her watching. For the first time she didn't see a dangerous man. She saw someone lonely. In that moment she whispered a small prayer in her heart, not knowing why. Maybe she prayed for his peace. Maybe she prayed for her own. But from that night, something gentle began to stir between fear and understanding, a feeling neither of them could yet name. He told her to stay away from the boss, but how could she avoid the man whose voice already lived quietly in her heart? The next morning the house felt tense. Men walked faster, their eyes sharper than before. Nina tried to stay out of the way as she carried a tray of coffee to Adrian's office. When she entered, he was speaking with another man, tall, with a scar on his chin and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is Marco Rossi," Adrian said. "He handles things when I'm not around." Marco looked at her slowly, then gave a half smile. "So this is the new helper," he said. "Pretty, but she should be careful here. This house eats the soft ones." Nina didn't answer. She only placed the tray down and left quietly, but Marco's words followed her all day. That afternoon, when she was cleaning the office shelves, Marco came back. He leaned against the door. "You seem kind," he said, his tone softer now. "But don't get too close to Adrian. He doesn't love. He uses people. When he's done, he forgets them." Nina froze, her heart thumping fast. "I only work here," she said quickly. "Nothing more." Marco gave a small laugh. Good. Keep it that way. Then he walked out, leaving her in silence. That night, she found Adrian sitting in the library reading. His sleeves were rolled up and there was a small cut on his arm. She hesitated but went to get a cloth. You're hurt, she said softly. It's nothing, he replied, but she gently cleaned the wound anyway. For a moment he just watched her hands move, careful, warm, different from everything he knew. Why are you helping me? He asked. Because you're human too, she said simply. Something in Adrian's eyes changed then, like a door opening for the first time. When Nina left, he sat still, touching the spot where her hand had been. He didn't understand why, but her kindness felt stronger than fear. Dinner with the man everyone feared should have felt like danger. But to her, it felt like standing close to a fire she didn't want to run from. Days passed quietly in the mansion. Nina kept working, trying not to draw too much attention. Yet somehow, Adrian always noticed her, how she brought him coffee exactly the way he liked it, how she spoke kindly to the workers no one else looked at, how her presence seemed to calm the storm inside him. One afternoon, as she was finishing her tasks, Adrian's voice called from behind his desk. Have dinner with me tonight. Nina blinked in surprise. Dinner? With you? Yes, he said simply. Just us. That evening, she stood nervously in front of her mirror, brushing her hair and smoothing her simple dress. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and neat. When she entered the dining hall, Adrian was already there, sitting under the soft glow of the chandelier. For once, he wasn't wearing his cold expression. He smiled, a small, real smile. Sit, he said gently. You've worked hard. The table was filled with food she had never tasted before. She ate slowly, careful not to make a mistake. But as the minutes passed, she began to relax. Adrian asked about her mother, her favorite flowers, and the stories behind her smile. Nina was surprised. No one had ever asked her those things before. I like daisies, she said shyly. They always look happy even in the rain. Adrian's eyes softened. You're like that, he murmured. You stay bright even when everything around you is dark. Nina looked down, her cheeks warm. For a moment she forgot who he was, the powerful man everyone feared. She only saw a man who seemed tired of being alone. After dinner he walked her to her room. Good night, Nina, he said quietly. Good night, sir, she whispered, though her heart whispered something else, something she was too afraid to name. From that night on, every time their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, soft but strong, like a secret promise neither of them understood yet. The smile that once felt warm now carried a shadow. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't come from an enemy, it comes from someone who once stood beside you. The days after the dinner felt different. Nina could sense something had changed, though neither she nor Adrian spoke about it. He had begun to trust her. He asked her opinion on small things and even let her bring him tea in the evenings. Those little moments felt like soft light in a dark world. But someone else had noticed the change, Marco Rossi. He watched the way Adrian's eyes softened when Nina entered the room. He noticed the way Adrian's cold tone turned gentle whenever she spoke. And each day the jealousy in his heart grew like a slow fire. Marco had always wanted Adrian's power. They had been friends once, but friendship in their world didn't always last. When a rival gang offered him money and a promise of control, Marco saw his chance. He began to pass along information about Adrian's business. But when one deal failed and the rival gang lost men, Marco needed someone to blame. Late one night he went to Adrian's office pretending to be upset. Boss, he said quickly, I think someone in the house has been talking to outsiders. The girl, Nina, she's been asking questions. Adrian froze. Nina? Marco nodded. I saw her speaking with a man near the gates 2 nights ago. He lied easily, his voice calm. Maybe she didn't mean harm, but we can't risk it. Adrian didn't want to believe it. Yet in his world, trust could cost a man his life. He said nothing, but his eyes turned cold again. The next morning, when Nina came to bring his coffee, he didn't look at her. You don't have to come to the office today, he said. Her heart sank. Did I do something wrong? He didn't answer. She walked away quietly, confused and hurt, not knowing that a lie had already begun to build a wall between them. And for the first time since she came to the mansion, Nina felt truly alone. She ran into the rain, believing love was only a dream. But sometimes, a storm is what God uses to wash away lies and show the truth. The sky was gray that morning. The mansion felt colder than ever. Nina tried to speak with Adrian, but he stayed distant, his voice quiet and sharp. He no longer looked at her the same way. The gentle man who had smiled at her over dinner seemed to have disappeared behind stone walls again. She didn't understand what she had done wrong. Every time she passed him in the hall, he turned away. Rosa, his sister, noticed her tears one evening and stopped her in the corridor. "Don't lose heart," Rosa whispered kindly. "My brother fights battles inside himself that no one can see." But by the third day, Nina could no longer bear the silence. She went to Adrian's office. "Please," she said softly, "if I've made a mistake, tell me. I'll fix it." He stood behind his desk, his jaw tight. "I trusted you," he said. "But you've been meeting strangers near my gates. Who sent you?" Nina's eyes widened. "What? I've never—" "Enough," he cut in. "You're leaving this house today." Her heart broke as she stared at him. "I thought you knew me," she whispered, her voice trembling. But he turned away, unable to meet her eyes. That night, the rain poured as Nina walked out of the mansion with her small bag. Each drop felt like the sky crying for her. She didn't know where to go, but she knew she couldn't stay. Inside the house, Adrian sat alone in the dark. His chest felt heavy, but he told himself it was better this way. Trust was weakness. Love was danger. Yet deep down something didn't feel right. When the storm thundered louder, a guard rushed in with a small envelope. It was a note from one of the men who had worked for Marco, proof that Marco had been lying all along. Adrian's hands shook as he read it. The truth hit him like the lightning outside. He had sent away the only person who had ever cared for him without asking for anything in return. And before the night was over, he knew what he had to do: go after her. He had faced danger 100 times without fear, but the thought of losing her forever broke something inside him that bullets never could. The rain had not stopped when Adrian left the mansion. The streets were dark and nearly empty. Water splashed under his boots as he searched for Nina, calling her name into the storm. He didn't care about his guards or his reputation. He only knew one thing: he had to find her. Nina had taken shelter in a small church at the edge of the city. Her dress was soaked and her hair clung to her face. She sat near the back pew, shivering but praying softly. "God," she whispered, "I don't understand why this hurts so much. I just wanted to do what was right." When the heavy doors opened behind her, she turned quickly. Adrian stood there, soaked to the bone, his face pale and tired. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. "Nina," he said quietly, taking slow steps toward her. "I was wrong." She stood, eyes wide with disbelief. "Why are you here?" "I found the truth," he said, his voice breaking. "It wasn't you. Marco lied. I should have trusted you. I should have believed what I saw in your eyes." Her hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. "You sent me away like I was nothing." "I know," he said softly. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if you let me." For a long moment, Nina just looked at him. She could see the pain, the regret, the man who wanted to change. Slowly she stepped closer. "Love isn't about power, Adrian," she said gently. "It's about truth. If you want this love, you must leave the world that breaks it." He nodded, his heart finally surrendering. "Then I will. I promise." As the storm eased outside, Adrian reached for her hand. It was warm and trembling, but she didn't pull away. That night, under the quiet roof of the old church, 2 broken hearts found forgiveness. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Costa felt peace. Just when peace felt near, the past rose again with fire and bullets. Love had softened his heart, but now it would be tested by danger. For a few days things seemed calm. Adrian and Nina stayed hidden in a small house near the river. He was different now, gentler, quieter, no longer the cold man who ruled through fear. Nina could see it in the way he spoke, in the way he smiled when she read to him at night. But far across the city, Marco Rossi was burning with anger. His plan had failed and his lies had been found out. He blamed Adrian and Nina for his downfall. With the help of a rival gang, he made one last plan: to destroy everything Adrian cared about. One quiet afternoon, as Nina cooked by the window, she noticed shadows moving outside. Her heart started to race. Before she could speak, the glass shattered. Men in dark coats broke into the house, shouting and firing. Adrian pulled her down to the floor, shielding her with his body. "Stay down," he shouted. Bullets tore through the room. The smell of smoke filled the air. Adrian grabbed his gun from under the table and fought back, but one shot hit him in the shoulder. He groaned but didn't stop. Nina crawled to him, pressing a cloth to his wound. "You're bleeding," she cried. "I'm fine," he said through pain. "I won't let them take you." Then just as suddenly as it began, the gunfire stopped. Rosa and a few loyal men from the mansion arrived, driving the attackers away. When the fight ended, Marco lay wounded outside, his pride finally gone. Adrian stood weakly, breathing hard. He looked at Nina, his face pale but calm. "It's over," he said softly. Nina touched his cheek with trembling fingers. "No, it's not. You're hurt." He smiled faintly. "You're my reason to live now. I can't die before I keep my promise." As Rosa helped them back inside, Nina held his hand tightly. The world outside was still dangerous, but their love had already survived more than fear. And in that moment, she knew nothing could break what God had begun between them. Sometimes love isn't soft. It's strong enough to face pain, brave enough to begin again when the world says it's over. The morning after the attack was quiet. The sun rose slowly over the river, painting the sky in soft gold. Adrian lay in bed, his shoulder wrapped in clean cloth. Nina sat beside him, her hand resting gently over his. Every few moments he opened his eyes just to see her there. Rosa stood by the window watching the light spread. "It's time to end this life, brother," she said firmly. "You can't go back to that world anymore." Adrian nodded weakly. "I know." By noon he called the few loyal men he still trusted. "No more deals, no more fights," he told them. "The Costa name will no longer rule by fear. It will end today." His voice was calm but sure. For the first time his heart felt light. Days turned into weeks as he healed. Nina cared for him through each step, changing his bandage, reading to him, and filling the house with quiet laughter. Every night before sleep she thanked God for saving them both. When Adrian grew strong again, he took Nina to the old garden behind the mansion. The roses were blooming, wild but beautiful. He looked at her with eyes that carried peace instead of power. "Nina," he said softly, taking her hand, "I've spent my life building walls, but you broke them all without even trying. You showed me what love really means." She smiled through tears. "Love isn't about power, Adrian. It's about faith." He reached into his pocket and brought out a small ring, simple, silver, shining in the sunlight. "Then have faith in me," he said. "Will you marry me?" For a moment she couldn't speak. Her heart was too full. Then she whispered, "Yes." Adrian pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Around them, the roses swayed in the wind, as if the whole world was finally breathing again. Love had won where violence had failed. And for the first time they both believed that peace could last. He once ruled by fear, but in her love he found peace. Sometimes the most powerful story isn't about winning, it's about changing. Months passed and the dark days of danger slowly faded into memory. Adrian sold his mansion and left the city life behind. He bought a small house by the sea, far from noise and guns. There the air was fresh and the waves whispered like soft music. Nina opened a flower shop in the nearby town. People loved her kindness, her gentle smile, and the way her flowers always seemed to carry hope. Adrian started a small security company, using his past not to harm but to protect. Together they built a life full of quiet joy. Every evening they walked along the shore. Adrian would hold Nina's hand, watching the sunset. "Do you ever miss the old life?" she once asked. He shook his head. "No. I found everything I was missing when I found you." Sometimes Rosa visited them, laughing as she played with the little dog they had adopted. Their home was full of warmth, faith, and laughter. The shadows of the past no longer scared them. They had turned into lessons that made their love stronger. One night, as the stars filled the sky, Nina whispered, "Do you ever think about how we met?" Adrian smiled. "Every day. You came into my world to pay a debt. Instead, you gave me a heart." Nina leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a long while, they just listened to the sound of the sea. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was a peaceful one. And in their peace, they found everything they had ever prayed for. Sometimes love doesn't arrive in soft places. It comes through storms, through pain, through change, and when it stays, it heals everything it touches. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional love stories filled with faith, change, and second chances. Your support helps more stories like Nina and Adrian's come to life.